You know, there are some books that make you laugh out loud, and one of them is the new book, The Unleavened Truth, by our next guest, Darryl A. Forman. Darryl, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, how funny is it being Jewish?
I think a lot of it has to do with perspective. I find that rather than go through the, oi, I got to go through this or that, I'd rather be funny. It's easier to get it out that way. And I think I have more friends because of it.
Have you always been funny?
Actually, I think I have. I think I came out of the womb speaking, and I think I got funny very fast.
And you've always been Jewish?
I've always been Jewish. I've always been the youngest in my family who was always trying to make a place for herself, and being funny really did it. So that's why I did it.
I remember several years ago I was at a big event at Lucas Ranch in Marin County, and it was to promote all these Star Wars related products. And I was looking at all this stuff out on the tables, and I just kind of stood under my breath, oh my God, look at all these tchotchkes. And the woman behind me, who I'd never met but then became a friend, said, what temple do you go to? And I said, oh, I'm not Jewish, I'm gay. She said, Jewish, gay, same thing.
They're very close. I mean, when you are a persecuted group, and if you're persecuted, if you're smart, and if you're cute, people tend not to like you.
What's that last part, if you're cute?
If you're cute, right, like Jews and gays. They're cute, they're smart, they're persecuted.
So you mean, you know, all kidding aside, you think there is this affinity between Jewish humor and gay humor and the Jewish community and the gay community?
Absolutely. And I think that Judaism has always kind of supported it. I mean, while the Torah says that you're not supposed to be gay for all the reasons, the truth is that there are parts of Judaism that now have female rabbis, they have gay rabbis, so I kind of think that we're pretty quick to embrace change, especially if it means adding to the numbers. You know, we're a shrinking tribe.
Uh-huh. Now, when you were growing up, being gay was not cool. I mean, your family was raised very Orthodox, correct?
Well, my mother did have a hairdresser, David, and he was the only gay person I'd ever met in my life. I was 10 years old. I mean, give me a break. This was a while back. Actually, I grew up in a community, Newton, Mass. I thought the whole world was just like me. And then when I came out to California, I said, whoa, I am not unique necessarily, but there are a lot fewer of me here. And I really found it very easy to be here. And also, I think that, and I don't know that you can speak for this being gay, but being Jewish, it's like I was seeped in its tradition growing up. I thought the whole world was Jewish, and yet when I came to a place where it wasn't, it really made me evaluate what it is. Mm-hmm. And so it gave me more of a cultural aspect, more responsibilities in terms of explaining to these people why we do the things we do, mm-hmm. how we can help it, how we answer questions with questions, what's wrong with that. Mm-hmm. So I think that I just got more of it culturally. Religiously, that's another matter.
And of course, you grew up with a gay brother.
I grew up with a gay brother. I grew up with a gay brother who is very, very smart, and I honestly think that him being so smart affected me more than him being gay because he didn't come out for a long time. Yeah. So it was really, and it was an era in which boys and girls didn't come out. It just wasn't a happy thing. I mean, I joke about David the hairdresser. Until I got to college, I didn't know any lesbians. Mm-hmm. You know, now granted, I probably knew hundreds. I just didn't know that they were, and maybe they didn't know. Right. So you just grow up in a community where if everybody isn't like you, you try to be like them. I mean, that's just what growing up is you try to define yourself. You have to find out what you are and then decide what you want to be or who you want to be. How
big of a issue was your brother's coming out in your family? Do you remember it?
Yes, I do remember it. We were in Golden Gate Park, and first of all, Randy was 27. People should have known. My mother knew. My father maybe didn't want to think about it, but they had to know. You know, oh, Randy, yeah, he's a confirmed batch. How many times you heard that? We were in Golden Gate Park, and when Randy told my parents, they were upset. I joke they were the color of the trees, but they really were upset. In fact, Randy had arranged for the next day to go visit George Moscone and Harvey Milk. And my parents were so upset with the news that they went on a tour of the city that they'd already seen. They just couldn't deal with it, and they just decided not to talk about it. But when, I do remember this clearly, that when he came out and they were like, ugh, and I said, listen, you got to accept him. He's my brother. You're going to get me, you're going to get him. This is just the way it is, you know, which is, I would imagine long term a parent would want to hear that. Short term, it didn't go over quite as well. Mm-hmm. So. Do you think that was because of your personal family experience, or did it have anything to do with religion? Did it have anything to do with, you're Jewish, you have to have a wonderful wife, and you have to have kids, and you have to, can you say, continue the tribe? Well, as I say in my new book, The Unleavened Truth, which actually it's a title story and it's about my father and the relationship I have with him. My father was a frustrated rabbi, so I think that the Judaism on his part made it very, very difficult for him to accept Randy being gay. I think my mother had a difficult time simply because you want your children to have the easiest roads possible, the easiest choices, so many choices, and this limited it, and that upset her. And so I think that's how she looked at it. And then it really wasn't that much of their life because Randy was here and they were in Florida, and so they didn't interact too much. But it was, I remember the day well, David.
Now, obviously we met through Randy. I met you over latkes at his annual party. How has it changed your relationship, one, him coming out, and also now how has you becoming a published author changed your relationship with Randy?
Jews are funny. This is like therapy today. I don't want to talk about this. How is this? It's so hard to say because I have a sister who's crazy in Boston. I have Randy who's here who's gay. So who's crazier? I mean, to be honest, I mean, as soon as he told him he was gay, I became the favorite child. I mean, it did boost me in the hierarchy, which wasn't a bad thing. But I think it made him a little bit more accepting of other people, other things. You know, I think because he was part of a group that had it tough, that he could relate to other groups that had it tough. And I think that Randy is an extremely empathetic person. So I think that's how it affected.
You know, a lot has been written about Jewish humor. And of course, you know, back in the 20s and 30s, I mean, the whole Catskills tour, I mean, a lot of the people that we have come to consider contributors, creators of the golden age of TV comedy, they were Jewish. But they hid their Jewishness because they were in a very anti-Semitic world. Do you still see kind of oppression as the catalyst for a lot of your humor? I mean, in the same way that camp in the gay community is, you know, we can say things that a non-gay person would never say because that's our way of turning.
They would never say out loud.
They would never say out loud. Do you think that's still true of Jewish humor?
Yes. I mean, of course, there are some jokes that I tell that I would never tell to a Gentile because they're just too coarse, but they're also very true. I think I happen to like this kind of humor. It's sarcastic, it's caustic, it's smart, there's puns, and yet at the same time I tell a story that relates to people. You know, Jews didn't have too many choices early on, and so when they did finally get into situations like Hollywood and like humor, I mean, they hired each other. They wanted to be with each other. I think you see that in any kind of group. You know, I think flamenco dancers are going to hire people from Brazil. They're not going to hire people from Alaska. You see it in music all the time, the same type of people playing that. So
yeah, but you never hear that there's this great flamenco dance mafia taking over the world. I mean, why do these stereotypes still exist?
Oh, it's interesting. I think a lot of the stereotypes about Jews are now felt by all middle-class, upper-middle-class people. As far as humor, though, I think it's different. It's a different kind of humor. I think that you see a lot of these, what is it, Seth Rogen? I always call him Rogaine. Anyway, I think, you know, his movies, they don't appeal to me. They're not funny. They're not intellectual. I like intellectual humor. I like the old stuff that Woody Allen used to do. I like the stuff, my new book. I like that kind of humor. I like humor that reaches out to you, that you don't guess what's going to happen before it comes. I'm a huge fan of Jon Stewart.
We know.
He's still my heart. And Stephen Colbert and how they're able to do it. And I think that when you see the both of them when they're interviews, I mean, I would love to be interviewed by Jon. I don't think I would like to be interviewed by Stephen Colbert.
Why not?
Because he's tough. I mean, you know, these shows have made fools of Tom Amiano. These shows have made fools of anybody they come near.
But I mean, it's interesting you say that because they're on, in one sense, I mean, Stephen Colbert got his career from Jon Stewart.
Right.
They're two sides of the same coin. But I never feel that Colbert is being purposefully nasty. It's not like a gotcha.
I think he's being difficult. And I think that he's going to test you at everything that you say. And I think it's remarkable how well some people do on his show. Because it's his show, you know, and if you don't say anything mean back, you shouldn't. You're there, it's his show, you know.
Would you say something mean back to Colbert?
Never.
Why not?
Because it's his house. You don't go into someone's house and be mean to them. And I just would never do that. I think another thing, I don't really like being, I mean, I love being mean in my head. I love saying nasty things to people. But what really, when it comes down to humor, I mean, I like saying nasty things to people, it's humor, you know, that's pretty biting. But as I write this book, as I keep writing, I think I really don't have to do mean humor. It's not funny. I'm
yeah, I mean,
better
your book
than
is
that.
not mean. I mean, it is very intellectual. There's wordplay, it's fun, but it's not, there's no gotcha.
Right, and I don't want to be like that. I think that a lot of people disguise cruelty as wit, and I don't want to be one of those people. I mean, I think it's remarkable the way Joan Rivers, I think it's remarkable she's alive. But I think it's great what she does, but that's not for me to do. I don't want to do it. And I'm not, you know, she's been very successful, obviously.
Right. Now, we've thrown down the gauntlet. We all know, anyone who knows you, that you want to be on the Jon Stewart show. If you were right here now and I was Jon Stewart, what would you say to him?
Can I have your children? No. What I would say to him, I would tell him how much I respect him, and I would thank him for those 8 years of Bush that he never varied, that he was always right there ready to attack him. And I would thank him for having me on his show, because it would make me bright by association and relevant.
How Jewish do you think his humor is? Is he a Jewish comedian?
Oh,
I mean, we know he is, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yes. I mean, he refers to himself being Jewish once or 3 times a week. He really does. And I don't think that's his only shtick. I mean, and then I go, gee, what if it was Jon Stewart? Or maybe I should sit and talk to his writers, because they're really the ones who put the stuff out. But I just have great respect for him. I like what he's done. I love that they had that March for Sanity in D.C. I like him. I think he's not the only news source I go to. I understand he is the only news source that other people go to.
Right.
But he's just very funny, and I think he's very fair, and I think he's fair to all groups. And I want to be on his show. John!
If anyone's watching from his show, we'll make sure they are.
Alive.
Please call Darryl Forman.
That's right.
In the next half of our show, I'm actually going to have you read from a couple segments of your book, and we're going to talk about this new phenomenon. Your book is actually an e-book. We have a copy here. It's printed, and anyone can buy it. But you actually went the route for your book e-publishing.
That's right.
And so it's just UnTreedReads.com. This is a new phenomenon, and I know when your book came out, it started going up the charts. So this is a brave new world we're entering. In our next segment, we're going to hear Darryl read from her book, The Unleavened Truth, and learn more about why it's funny being Jewish and the connections between the LGBT community and the Jewish community. We'll be right back.
Want to get rid of pimples fast? Use just a dab of the Proactive Refining Mask and your problem zits start to vanish.
You are going to love the Proactive Refining Mask. It helps clear stubborn pimples, plus it gives you that proactive glow.
The refining mask is my magic power tool. You just put a little dab on whatever spot is bugging you, and then you wake up in the morning and everything's changed.
The fast-acting refining mask is free when you order the Proactive 3-Step System. Women's Health magazine says this zit zapper is no gimmick. The mask controls breakouts fast, while Proactive heals the acne and helps prevent future breakouts.
The refining mask is the bomb. Put it on, next morning, nothing.
Order Proactive for only $19.95, and you'll get the fast-acting refining mask plus the green tea moisturizer at no extra charge.
Proactive is unbelievable, and I saw results within literally 3 days.
Get control of your breakouts with Proactive. Call the number on your screen today.
Now I have fabulous skin.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state, this may be the most important phone call you'll ever make.
I owed $50,000 in taxes. But listen.
Your tax problem is settled. You only owe $8,400.
What a great message.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state, then you owe it to yourself to call this number. Let our experts help guide you through the process of negotiating a tax settlement. Call this number or go to tax10000.com.
And we're back with Darryl A. Forman, the author of the hysterical new book, The Unleavened Truth. You know, there's a section at the beginning of this book that I love, and I'm going to read it, about why the Jews were the chosen people. It's just a short little thing here. When people ask me why Jews are the chosen people, I shrug my shoulders and tell them everyone else said no. I mean, this is kind of the beginning of Jewish humor, kind of the self-deprecating.
That's right.
I remember someone, it wasn't you, although I can credit you, but I remember some comic once said that the good Lord gave the Jewish people the only country in the Middle East that didn't have oil under it.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, who was that? Do you remember?
I think a lot of people have said it.
Now, your book is a very non-traditional book in a sense because it's an e-book. Your publisher is a company called UnTreed Reads. What has that been like for you, and what made you decide to do a book in this new way?
Well, I had written a bunch of essays, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with them. The skills to write and the skills to promote, as you know, are very different. So I just kept writing, and I happened to be invited to a party by Katie Sullivan, who was the publisher. And while I was there, I met the editor, Jay Hartman, and he said, why don't you send me some of the stuff? So I sent him some of my stories, my best stories. I knew they were Jewish. I sent Jewish stories. And they loved them. They wanted to do it. And I was just elated when it happened because I had thought about maybe putting it out myself. But this is very efficient. I mean, it's such a quick way of doing it. And, you know, I got a royalty check. I framed it. I mean, I framed a copy of it. I cashed it for it. But, and so it's a really good way to get things out quickly. It seems to be the new wave of publishing. I think that there are many e-publishers out there, and I think, of course, that UnTreed Reads is the best publisher, the e-publisher, that they are looking for good manuscripts. I think a lot of people are looking for good manuscripts, and I think it's a great opportunity for people. And it's certainly, I mean, for the environment, you can't beat it. Yeah. And it's a good price, very good value.
I was on Muni the other day, public transit here in San Francisco, and for the first time, everyone who was reading something electronic.
From a Kindle, sure.
I'm talking, yeah, a Kindle or an iPad or a small device, and I'm talking young, old, gay, straight, you name it. And I thought, wow, that's a first. That's the first time I saw everybody. It was like a commercial, and that's, you know, going to be the wave of the future. I'd like you to read a little bit from one of your stories.
I'd like to say one other thing. Yeah. In addition to this being an e-book, I kind of created a genre for this book, and that genre is not-autobiography, and that's N-O-T-A-U-B-I-O, etc. So all the things that I say, even though I speak in the first person, they're not necessarily true. They might not have happened to me. They might have happened to you. So rather than a memoir, it's kind of like a you-moir or someone else-moir. So if you're watching this show and you're thinking, oh, she really did these things, don't be so sure that that's actually what I did.
So it's a new genre, the not-a-biography.
Not-a-biography. Kind of a cross between Jim Fry, that guy on Oprah who didn't quite tell the truth, and Anais Nin. It's just kind of
Milli Vanilli.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite stories. This is called "I'm Davening as Fast as I Can," and I'm talking about going to work at Charles Schwab. Actually, I said I won these people over with my work and my wit. After the humor came the dreidels at Hanukkah. I explained to these math and finance PhDs that playing the dreidel game is like playing the stock market, all about probabilities and risk, though at the time I think that the dreidel had a higher rate of return. Then I became their knowledge guardian of all things Jewish. I answered their questions about customs, ceremonies, appropriate bar mitzvah gifts, food, and celebrities. By the time I was through, they could tell knishes from kasha, kasha from kishka, and kishka from Koufax. I felt that along with my responsibility to write for the group, I also had the right to write about the rights, joy, and the fun parts of religion, keeping away from the guilt, which is best passed on by parents. With the help of the 2-volume Jewish Book of Why, I was able to answer all their questions. I stumbled, though, when my most unusually named colleague, Dr. Song Ling Ding from Gay Paris, Truth, asked if Jews were my tribe, what did this make him and my other colleagues? I replied that they were my pack, my day-to-days versus my DNAs. And just like Dr. Ding can't help being French and critical of most things non-French, I can't help being Jewish and critical of almost everything. It isn't an attitude or an affectation, it just is, and you can't spell Jewish without is.
So now, this love for alliteration, is this something you learned, or did it come to you?
I think alliteration is really cheap, but when you can do it in a foreign language, it's kind of cool. So there is no wordplay that I won't stoop to get a point across or to get a laugh. So, I mean, I write things here. In fact, I'm going to read a piece about my father, and he was a good guy. He wasn't a bad guy, but it was a lot easier to make him into a not a good guy, to write a story about him, that conflict. So that's the part I create. All the joy and peace and happiness, that's all me.
Right. Now, we have stories about politics, family, work. What haven't you written about that maybe is too close for you to write about? Anything?
I think writing the one about my father was a tough one. I think if I actually wrote about my history, it would surprise some people how it went. But I wrote a story about the Supreme Court. And I would like to get back to that. I'd like to rewrite that story because it's not mean enough. I find them to be very mean, especially 5 of them.
So even though you say you won't be mean, you want to be mean in that one?
It's hard to write some. Well, actually, I would say I can be mean, but I might not publish it. Good point there. I wrote a story about a former boss, and it's so mean that I can't publish it. But I like reading it.
Is it funny?
Yes.
So maybe you can change the names to protect the guilty.
I've already changed the names, but it's still pretty obvious. He's a guy. He kept saying he was leaving, kept saying he was leaving. He would never go away, so I called him the Rash. And that's kind of how the story goes.
Read the story about your dad.
Okay. I mentioned that he was a frustrated wannabe rabbi. I don't think Dad would have been a very good rabbi, who, by the way, let me start again. I don't think Dad would have been a very good rabbi because he was short of temper, short of empathy, and just plain short. It was like he read about life but lacked the emotions to feel it. Hence, discussions about anything at all emotional often sounded like old B-movie dialogue. In 1977, when my 27-year-old brother came out to my parents, who should have known by then, my father said, "I hope you don't just go home with any sailor." It made me wonder if maybe he had gone home with a sailor. To me, the family skill he most lacked was being able to get real close, the kind of under your skin close, and still be able to forgive, forget, and move on. Dad had a lot of problems with the forgive part. He carried grudges like we carry water bottles, everywhere, every day, only he never threw his bottles away. So that...
Yeah, if someone just read that, they would think, weren't so fond of your dad. But is that true?
Well, he wasn't exactly my biggest advocate in the family, let's just put it that way. You know, it doesn't really matter what happened, it's kind of how you remember what happened. And there are times when I think very, very fondly of him. There are certain moments I have that are just, or things that happen when I hear the shofar blowing on Passover, on Rosh Hashanah, and on Passover, I'm always thinking about, you know, there are certain nice, poignant moments. I think that he would have loved to have seen the Red Sox finally win a World Series, and I think he would have enjoyed that the Giants did too. But if I got to pick my parents, would I pick them? Well, first of all, they never would have picked me, so I guess it's a moot question. Do
you think that's true? They wouldn't have picked you?
I think my mother would have. I mean, there wasn't a pedestal high enough for me not to be on it. But no, I don't think he would have picked me. But I did marry a Jewish guy. You know, that was a real good thing. Of course, I did divorce a Jewish guy.
I was going to
say,
how did that work out? Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, it's like this. You know, I mean, a marriage works out for 10 years. And it's like, well, that isn't so bad. But it's kind of like, well, if you swim across the English Channel and get halfway and you die, does that count? Yeah.
I know the other.
This is a real fun interview, huh, David? I can't wait to come back here.
I know you went the other day to this thing, FedFest.
I went to FedFest.
And that was an interesting collection of Jewish intellectuals and writers and media people from all over the place. I think a lot of people don't realize that the New York Times columnist, David Brooks, very much a conservative, is Jewish. What was it like hearing him? I mean, there's this assumption that somehow I think, and this is where the Jewish community and the gay community idea comes back together again, that we're all liberal and we're all on the left. That's not necessarily true.
It disappoints me that David Brooks is a conservative. I'm sure he's disappointed that the Republican Party represents conservatives as well as all those other crackpots. I didn't get to hear him because I was at another event, but just being there, it's just... I joked that I hadn't seen that many Jewish people since high school, which really isn't true. But I felt like I knew everybody. It was a very easy conversations. I mean, it's kind of a species recognition thing. And so all of a sudden you put them all in one place and you have all this kind of energy where you're so much closer to that person already because you don't have to go through all this thing. I remember meeting one guy and just talking about it. And then I turned to him and I said, you know, I bet you would have been really nice to meet if I'd let you talk. And he said, well, that's just the way we are. You know, I mean, and that's just the way we are. How many words can we get into a minute? So,
now for your next book, what are we going to see?
My next book, I've written a couple of stories about it. I wrote about a trip to Israel. I was in Maui for the tsunami. I wrote a little story about that. I find myself once again, instead of going into like one area, that I'm like all over the place.
Going in different areas.
Right, right.
Well, we will have you back to talk about
that.
I
can't wait. Thank you, David.
We've been speaking with Darryl Forman, author of The Unleavened Truth. I'm David Perry, and you've been watching 10%. I hope you'll tune in next week. Thanks so much.